My name is Elena Carter. I'm 32 years old. And the night my mother tried to shrink me in front of 32 guests was the night I finally stopped shrinking. This is our other daughter, my mother said, smiling the way people smile when apologizing for something unpleasant. She cleans houses. She didn't even look at me when she said it. The Groom's family sat across from us at a long white linen table inside the Briarwood Room, the nicest private dining space in our town of Ashford, Illinois. Candlelight flickered across polished glassware. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. Everything was elegant. Except the way I was being introduced. My father nodded beside her, cutting into his steak. "We've given up on her," he added casually, like he was discussing whether. 32 people heard it. I heard it louder than anyone. The air in my lungs felt thin. My hands were folded in my lap, fingernails pressed into my palms so hard they left half-moon dents. What my mother didn't know, what she never once bothered to ask, was that cleaning houses had turned into a multi-state operation. 14 states. 93 employees. 3 regional managers. A waiting list for franchise applications. And the woman sitting directly across from me, the groom's mother, was about to recognize my name. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. I was 4 years old when Margaret and Thomas Carter brought me home. Ashford was the kind of town where everybody knew who bought new patio furniture before they knew why. Population 6,200. 1 high school. 2 churches. A main street that still closed at 6 p.m. For the first 3 years, I was the miracle. Margaret carried me on her hip at church like proof of her goodness. Women squeezed my cheeks and said, "You're such a blessing to them." My mother glowed under the attention. I wasn't a child. I was a testimony. Then Clara was born. I remember the week everything shifted. Not because anyone said anything cruel yet, but because the house rearranged itself around her. My room moved from the pink-painted bedroom near my parents' to the small converted attic upstairs. My drawings disappeared from the refrigerator, replaced by Clara's hospital bracelet in a gold frame. My mother stopped calling me my miracle and started calling me Elena, flat, distant, like a teacher taking attendance. By the time I was 10, the narrative had solidified. Clara was our girl. I was the adopted one. Margaret never said it to my face, not at first. She said it at the mailbox. She said it at PTA meetings. She said it while standing in the church parking lot with her arms folded. "Some things just aren't in the blood," she would sigh. She said it like she was explaining a stain that wouldn't lift. My father never corrected her. That was his role. Silence. His silence gave her permission. And I learned early. Love in this house had conditions. And I had never met them. I graduated from Ashford High on a humid Tuesday afternoon. Margaret didn't attend. Clara had a dance showcase 2 towns over. Thomas said he'd try. He didn't. That night, I packed 2 duffel bags and left. I had $417 in savings from babysitting and part-time work at the grocery store. I rented a tiny studio above a laundromat in Riverton. The walls smelled like detergent and heat. The pipes clanged every night at 11 p.m. It was the most peaceful sleep I'd ever had. During the day, I cleaned houses. At first, it was just survival. Bathrooms. Baseboards. Oven grease that required kneeling for 40 minutes straight. Hair clogs in drains that made my stomach twist. It wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. Every dollar I earned came from my hands. Nobody could say I didn't deserve it. Margaret told people at church. Elena chose a different path. She said different like it meant defective. Her name was Mrs. Evelyn Harper. 76 years old. Widow. Lived alone in a small blue house with peeling shutters and a garden she could no longer maintain. She was my first regular client. One afternoon, while I scrubbed her kitchen tile, she set a glass of iced tea on the counter and said, "You're too good at this to stay small." I laughed. "It's just cleaning." She shook her head. "No. It's discipline. It's pride. That's rare." She was the first person who ever said something about me that wasn't wrapped in disappointment. "You should hire help," she added. That sentence changed everything. At 19, I registered my first LLC. Carter Shine Residential. I framed the business license and took a picture. I sent it to my mother. She replied, "Cute. One word. No punctuation." I almost quit that week. I almost drove back to Ashford and begged them to just see me. Instead, I hired one employee. Then 2. Then 5. By 25, I had expanded into 3 neighboring states. By 28, investors were calling. By 30, we were franchising. I never told my parents. Not because I wanted revenge. Because they never asked. The invitation arrived in thick cream cardstock. Clara Carter and Daniel Whitmore. Engagement celebration. The Briarwood Room. My phone rang an hour later. "Elena," my mother said, voice tight. "The Whitmores are very respected. Daniel's mother owns multiple luxury rental properties. I don't want you drawing attention." "Drawing attention how?" "Just, don't mention the cleaning thing." "The cleaning thing?" "I run a company," I said quietly. "Yes, well. Blend in. Blend in." That had always been the instruction. Disappear politely. I almost didn't go. But Clara called me separately, voice small. "Please come." So I did. There were 32 guests. White linens. Crystal glasses. Polished silverware. There was one empty chair beside Clara. My mother's purse sat on it. "There's a seat over there," she said, nodding toward a smaller overflow table by the window. I walked there without arguing. I had done this dance before. Dinner progressed. Wine flowed. My mother performed. Then Daniel's mother, Victoria Whitmore, asked, "And the young woman by the window? Is she also your daughter?" Margaret hesitated only half a second. "Oh, that's Elena. She's adopted. She cleans houses." There it was. My father added, without looking up, "We've given up on her." The words didn't sting anymore. They bruised. Bruises go deeper. I looked up. And Victoria Whitmore was staring at me. Not with pity. With recognition. Midway through the main course, Victoria turned fully toward me. "What's the name of your company?" Margaret laughed lightly. "Oh, it's nothing formal." Victoria didn't look at her. I asked Elena. I met her gaze. "Carter Shine Residential." Victoria went very still. She repeated it softly. Then she excused herself. I watched through the glass partition as she stepped into the hallway, pulled out her phone, and searched. Her thumb stopped scrolling. Her lips parted. And she smiled. Not politely. Not socially. Knowingly. When she came back to the table, everything changed. "I'd like to say something," Victoria said calmly. The room quieted. I manage over 200 luxury rental properties across the Midwest. 2 years ago, I was looking for a scalable residential cleaning partner. She paused. I found an Incorporated magazine feature about a young founder who expanded from a single operator to 14 states in under a decade. Margaret shifted in her seat. Victoria continued. That founder was Elena Carter. Silence. Last reported annual revenue, $3.1 million. A fork clattered against porcelain. Margaret's hand tightened around her wine glass. And I invested. The room recalculated me in real time. My father looked at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Margaret attempted recovery. We always knew she had potential. Victoria's gaze sharpened. 2 minutes ago, you said her business was nothing formal. Silence pressed against the walls. I stood. Not dramatically. Just steadily. I didn't come here to prove anything, I said. I came because Clara asked me to. I looked at my mother. But I won't sit at any table where I'm treated like an embarrassment. I turned to Victoria. Thank you for asking me. Then I left. I didn't cry in the parking lot. That's the first thing you should know. I sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the windshield. My pulse was loud in my ears, but my face was calm. Not because I wasn't hurt. Because I was done being surprised. When you grow up as the tolerated child, you learn early not to expect tenderness. You learn to brace before impact. But something inside me had shifted tonight. For the first time, someone had seen me in the room I'd always been erased from. And that changes a person. Clara called at 11:37 p.m. Her name flashed across my screen 4 times before I answered. Elena. Her voice was raw, like she'd been crying hard and trying not to. I'm here. You have no idea what happened after you left. I leaned back against my couch. My apartment felt quiet, steady, a different world from that dining room. Tell me. There was a long exhale on the other end. Mom tried to laugh it off. She said you've always been dramatic. That stung, not because it was new, but because it was predictable. Nobody laughed, Clara continued. Not even Aunt Denise. That mattered. In our town, Aunt Denise laughed at everything. It was her way of surviving. Clara's voice lowered. Victoria looked at Dad and said, I'm not judging your daughter. I'm judging how you speak about her. I closed my eyes. I could picture it. Victoria Whitmore didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Authority like hers didn't shout. She said that. Yes. And Dad? He didn't say anything. Of course he didn't. Silence had always been his shield. But tonight, it had become evidence. Clara told me guests started leaving early. Excuses about babysitters. Early mornings. Long drives. Nobody wanted to sit in the blast radius of what had just happened. Mom went to the restroom for nearly 15 minutes. When she came back, her mascara was smudged. But no one mentioned it. Not because they didn't notice. Because they didn't want to get closer. You should have seen her, Elena, Clara whispered. She looked small. I didn't feel satisfaction. That surprised me. I felt tired. Bone-deep tired. Because the truth is, I never wanted to humiliate my mother. I just wanted her to stop humiliating me. Ashford doesn't keep secrets. It marinates in them. By Monday morning, the engagement dinner was the only topic at Brewster's Cafe. The details were exaggerated, of course. Somebody said I owned 150 employees. Somebody else said Victoria offered me a 6-figure deal on the spot. But the core of the story remained. Margaret Carter publicly dismissed her daughter. And it backfired. At church that Sunday, 2 families quietly stepped out of my mother's prayer circle. No announcement. No confrontation. Just distance. Reputation in a small town is fragile. And my mother had built hers on being the devoted, self-sacrificing matriarch. The woman who did everything for her girls. Now people were asking quiet questions. The wedding wasn't cancelled. But it was postponed. Daniel called Clara the following weekend. She told me about it while sitting cross-legged on my living room floor, eyes swollen. He said he loves me, she whispered. But he needs to understand our family better before he marries into it. I felt something sharp in my chest. Not anger at him. Respect. He had seen something that night. And he wasn't ignoring it. He wants family counseling, Clara said. 6 sessions minimum. And how did Mom react? Clara gave a hollow laugh. She said, "This is your fault." Of course she did. When your identity is built on being right, accountability feels like betrayal. 3 weeks after the dinner, my phone rang. Margaret. I stared at it for 5 full rings. Then I answered. "Elena, we need to talk." Her voice wasn't warm. It wasn't apologetic. It was strained. "Okay. People are asking questions at church. Pam won't return my calls. This situation is getting out of hand." This situation. Not what I did. Not how I hurt you. This situation. "You're calling because people are talking," I said calmly. "Not because you think you did something wrong." There was a pause. "I told the truth," she snapped. "You do clean houses." "I built a company," I replied. "And you reduced it to a punchline. You've always been sensitive." There it was. The oldest weapon in her arsenal. Make me the problem. I inhaled slowly. "Mom. I'm not cutting you off. I'm not disappearing. But I will not come back to that table emotionally or physically until you acknowledge what you've been doing for nearly 3 decades. You want me to grovel?" she demanded. "I want you to stop pretending." Silence. I could hear her breathing. I could almost feel her searching for the angle that made her the victim. When she couldn't find one, she hung up. For the first time in my life, the click of that disconnection didn't make me panic. It made me steady. Clara drove to my house on a grey October afternoon. She'd never been there before. She stood in my entryway like she was stepping into proof. Proof that I existed outside the version our mother narrated. My home wasn't extravagant, but it was peaceful. Clean lines. Soft lighting. Framed certifications on the wall. A photo of Mrs. Harper smiling beside me on the day I hired my 10th employee. Clara stared at it. "Who's she?" "My first client." "She looks proud." She was. Clara swallowed. "I knew Mom was hard on you," she said quietly. "But I didn't realize how much I benefited from it." That sentence broke something open between us. "You were surviving too," I said. She shook her head. "No. I was comfortable." We talked for 3 hours. Not about the dinner. About hiring processes. Payroll headaches. Expansion into Michigan. Normal things. Sister things. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. "I'm starting to see it now," she whispered. "See what?" "How she needed you to be smaller so I could be bigger." I didn't answer. Because that was the truth neither of us had dared to name before. The real damage wasn't the gossip. It wasn't the church whispers. It wasn't even the postponed wedding. It was this. For the first time, people saw my parents clearly. And once clarity enters a room, it doesn't leave easily. My father called me 2 weeks later. Not to apologize. To ask if the revenue number was accurate. "Yes," I said. He cleared his throat. "That's impressive." Impressive. Not "I'm proud of you." Not "I was wrong." Just impressive. "Thank you," I replied. Silence. He didn't know how to speak to me outside the narrative they'd built. And I realized something in that moment. They had never actually known me. They had only known the version of me that fit their story. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't post about the dinner. I didn't seek revenge. I did something harder. I built quietly. I expanded into 2 more states. I gave 3 employees management promotions. I increased wages. I sponsored a scholarship at Ashford High anonymously. Because here's what people don't tell you about boundaries. They're not walls. They're doors. And you get to choose who walks through. Right now, my door is open a crack. But they have to knock differently. The first family counseling session was held in a beige office 20 miles outside of Ashford. Neutral territory. Dr. Halpern had soft eyes and a voice that didn't rush. The kind of man who let silence do the heavy lifting. We sat in a semicircle. Clara next to Daniel. My mother rigid, ankles crossed. My father leaning back, already defensive. And me. Calm. That unsettled them more than anger ever could. Dr. Halpern folded his hands. Why are we here? My mother answered immediately. There was a misunderstanding at a family dinner that's now affecting my younger daughter's engagement. A misunderstanding. I didn't interrupt. He nodded slowly. Elena. I'm here because I'm tired of being minimized. My father exhaled sharply. Minimized how? The therapist asked gently. I held his gaze. For most of my life, my accomplishments have been framed as accidents. Or embarrassments. Or less than. That's not true, my mother snapped. Dr. Halpern didn't look at her. Can you give an example? The engagement dinner, I said evenly. I was introduced as someone who cleans houses. You do clean houses, my mother insisted. I own a multi-state company, I replied. Those are not the same thing. The room went quiet. Daniel spoke for the first time. I don't care what Elena does for work, he said. But I care how she's spoken about. Clara's hand tightened around his. And that, more than anything, shifted the air. Because now it wasn't just about me. It was about the pattern. Dr. Halpern leaned forward. Margaret, when you describe Elena's work, what do you feel? My mother blinked, thrown off by the question. I feel concerned, she said finally. Concerned about what? That she didn't reach her full potential. I almost smiled. There it was. The story she'd told herself for years. And what would that potential look like? He asked. A degree. A respectable title. Stability. I inhaled slowly. My company generated $2.8 million in revenue last year, I said quietly. I employ 43 people. I provide health benefits. Paid maternity leave. My father's eyes flickered. I continued. I built stability. Just not the version you recognize. Silence again. This time, heavier. It didn't explode dramatically. It cracked. Clara started crying first. I grew up thinking Elena just didn't try hard enough, she said through tears. Because that's what I was told. My mother looked at her like she'd been slapped. That's not fair. But it's true, Clara whispered. My father shifted in his seat. We pushed both of you. No, Clara said. You protected me. You criticized her. The words landed. Solid. Undeniable. Dr. Halpern didn't rescue anyone from the discomfort. He let it sit there. Because sometimes truth needs oxygen. After the session, my father asked to speak with me alone in the parking lot. The sky was grey. Wind sharp. He didn't meet my eyes at first. I didn't realize, he muttered. Didn't realize what? That it felt like that. Felt like that. As if it were a mood. A phase. It didn't just feel like that, I said calmly. It was like that. He rubbed his face. You were always independent. That's not the same as not needing support. That stopped him. He looked older in that moment. Smaller. I thought you didn't care what we thought. I almost laughed. Children always care. Even when they pretend not to. I cared, I said softly. I just stopped asking. That hit him harder than anger would have. The fourth session was different. Margaret came in quieter. Less defensive. Dr. Halpern asked her directly. What would accountability look like for you? She swallowed. Then she looked at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. I diminished your work, she said stiffly. Because I didn't understand it. My chest tightened. She continued, voice less steady now. And because I didn't know how to explain success that didn't look like what I'd imagined. There it was. Not a perfect apology, but a real one. Clara cried again. I didn't. I just nodded. Thank you, I said. Forgiveness isn't fireworks. It's a door unlocking quietly. The wedding was rescheduled for spring. Smaller. More intentional. At the rehearsal dinner, my mother stood to give a toast. The room stilled. She cleared her throat. I've made mistakes as a parent, she began. One of them was confusing pride with control. People shifted in their chairs. She turned toward me. Elena built something extraordinary. Not because of me, but despite me. Gasps. Soft. But real. I'm learning, she finished. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. But it was honest. And honesty, after years of distortion, feels revolutionary. After the wedding, Clara and I stood outside under string lights. You okay? She asked. Yeah. She studied me. You didn't gloat. You could have. I didn't want to win, I said. I wanted to stop losing. She smiled through tears. You're different now. No, I replied gently. I'm the same. I just stopped shrinking. My company expanded into 3 more cities the following year. I still clean houses sometimes. Not because I have to, but because I built this with my hands. And I'm not ashamed of that. My parents visit occasionally. Conversations are slower. Careful. But real. Healing isn't loud. It's consistent. And here's the truth no one tells you. The most powerful revenge is living so fully that the narrative built to contain you can't hold your shape anymore.